We know the grid is undergoing massive change, which creates massive opportunities for local energy. The Energy Changemakers podcast offers rich conversations with industry leaders to help you and your company capture opportunities to build the decentralized grid. I'm your host, Elisa Wood. Welcome to the Energy Changemakers podcast. Hey everyone, Elisa Wood from Energy Changemakers here. Distributed energy is misunderstood and underrepresented. So what do we do about that? It's basically the reason I started Energy Changemakers. Energy Changemakers is obviously about change, but a specific kind of change, a transformation to our electricity system that I think is more important than any others going on right now. And that is the move toward more local, customer-controlled, or community-controlled energy. This type of electric power is called by various names, most commonly distributed energy, but also decentralized energy, democratized energy, or energy at the grid edge. The common acronym used to describe distributed energy is DERs, and that's what I'll use here to talk about them. And DERs come in various forms. Probably the most common that many people are aware of is rooftop solar and energy storage in the form of batteries. But there are other kinds of DERs like fuel cells, small wind turbines, generators, community solar. I created Energy Changemakers to provide content and community for those working on the grid edge, those working in DERs. After co-founding Microgrid Knowledge and its conference and working on that publication for several years, I came to realize that DERs offer many benefits that centralized power plants or centralized electric grid do not. Benefits that are often either unknown, misunderstood, or neglected. I witnessed many conversations among decision makers where distributed energy doesn't come up. Conversations about utility resource planning or energy legislation, regulatory changes. Conversations about reducing electricity costs, reaching climate goals, creating resilience or reliability. Distributed energy can play a significant role in all of these, but often it just isn't seriously weighed against other options. Why is that? Well, there's no one reason. Some say it's a concept disliked by utilities who fear it will erode their sales. If people are generating solar from their rooftops, they're not buying utility power. Others say it's because large-scale energy, big wind and solar farms, power plants, nuclear plants, give investors a larger bang for their buck than solar and storage on a home or business. I'm not really going to delve into the reasons DERs aren't always considered, but I do want to talk about what's misunderstood, what's not talked about when it comes to distributed energy. This conversation is particularly important right now, as I'm recording this in February 2025, because we have a new administration in Washington, D.C., and if early declarations hold, this administration wants to focus on large energy projects, not DERs. Even green energy advocates often, or sometimes, don't fully understand the role DERs play. They say that DERs are too small. They can't generate enough power at scale. We can't reach our climate goals fast enough if we focus a lot on DERs. We won't be able to serve all of the electric demand emerging from the coming proliferation of data centers and electric vehicles. But here's the thing. Making those kinds of comparisons between DERs and large-scale energy projects is simply off point. It's like saying, we don't need cars because we have jets, and jets are faster and then go further. Cars play a different role. And interestingly, like DERs, you can own a car. Someone else controls the jet or the utility-scale wind farm. So what are these benefits that DERs provide that big power does not? There's some overlap here, but basically these are the ones. First of all, your business or home will have backup power when the energy from the large power plant can't reach you because the grid is down due to a storm, or perhaps the grid's malfunctioning because of extreme heat. We have seen that. Second, DERs can be installed quickly. It takes a lot longer to build power plants and the transmission lines to move the power from the power plant to the home or business. We're hearing a lot now that speed is of the essence in adding power to the US electric system because AI is causing electric demand to grow so fast. So, this is a significant benefit of DERs. Because DERs are built close to those they serve, their power doesn't have to travel long distances. This is another important consideration because when electricity travels over wires, some of it basically evaporates. It's what's known as line loss. So that's money that just disappears. DERs are more efficient in this respect, more cost effective in this respect. And here's another important benefit of DERs. You or your community can own your rooftop solar or batteries or other DERs. You can control it. You can decide how much of your energy supply you want to be renewable, for example. And then you can accrue the benefits from those systems. You often hear people say that when they install solar on their rooftop, they see their electric bills go down. And here's sort of the essence of the ownership or the control discussion. It allows you or your community to share in the wealth of the energy asset. Your battery, your electric vehicle, your solar panels can, for example, at times, in certain places, provide services to the central grid, perhaps in the form of a virtual power plant. And ideally, you get paid for those services. So that wealth from that asset stays with you. The Energy Changemakers community recently had a brainstorming discussion, a live stream, where we dove into a lot of these issues pretty deeply. And about 50 folks came and had some really interesting things to say. I want to play you some of the highlights. Here, listen to what Erica Ginsberg Clement, Vice President of Operations at Gizmo Power, has to say about this concept of keeping energy wealth with you or your community.
Our motto at this point is if you can plug in, if you can own your own generation, that is economically interesting for the individual who owns that generator. It also has really a lot of other benefits for resilience. If you can get a 240-volt split phase plug under your control, whether you're a renter or not, and you have a sunny spot, you can generate your own electricity, which is ultimately the ROI for the owner, not for some aggregator, not for a distributor, not for a soft cost, not for a permit, not for delivery, not for transmission, not for anything. And that is our goal.
DERs also are a technology of our times. They're well suited to a software based or digitalized electric system, which is what ours in the US is becoming. They respond quickly and can be resources to serve the grid, as I said earlier. So, in essence, this software based system creates new efficiencies that DERs play with well. But here's the issue. What exactly are the benefits that we're talking about here, the benefits of DERs worth? What's it worth to have reliable energy resilience? What's it worth to have more efficient energy, to have cleaner energy? What's it worth to own that power and control that power and shape it for your community? We haven't figured out how to value these services very well. We know what an electron from a big wind farm is worth, but DERs deliver more than just electrons, as we've said. Like, what's the value, for example, of keeping a hospital online during a storm? What's the monetary value of that? Listen to what Bill Prindle, principal of Better Energy Advisors, has to say about valuating DERs.
The last issue that I wanted to raise is on the valuation of DER and other demand side assets. So, at the distribution level, when you can only value a certain fraction of the value stack, how regulators treat that valuation question is hugely important. And I just wanted to make a plug, and I put a link in the chat for the National Energy Screening Project. I have colleagues who work on that, and they've been evolving really thoughtful, well-grounded standard practice methods for doing DER evaluation, and some states are taking that up. I think that's really where the action is going to be state by state, is for folks in this business to really move forward the whole process of how do you value DERs.
So, how do we change this? Grid architect Lorenzo Christoph, a well-known thinker on issues surrounding energy democracy, advocates for what he calls bottom-up planning. Rather than energy planning starting on high with the utility or grid operator, have it integrated into local planning. Here's how Lorenzo puts it.
I really endorse the point made by the folks from Gizmo about ownership, that the value of DERs is not only decentralizing the technology, but decentralizing the ownership of the assets. And how we build wealth in the economy we live in is we own assets that are productive and that produce value and that can generate revenues. And to me, that's an intimate element of how we deal with economic justice or environmental justice. It really is enabling local communities, tribes, local co-ops, et cetera, to own the assets, to generate revenues, and to own the revenues, and to own the energy that's being produced. Something I've been thinking about a lot, and in fact, recently just wrote a book chapter, which will come out in the next couple of months, about bottom-up resource planning. And I think going back to the idea of local ownership and local benefits, the notion being that forever, city planners don't think about energy. They think about zoning and land use and developments and maybe mobility and building codes and so on, but they don't do energy because the utility does that. And I think that needs to change. I think given that cities and counties have climate action plans, et cetera, and think about how they're going to grow economic development, energy needs to be part of local planning. How do we value all of the things that DERs can offer when we're making these kinds of resource and planning decisions?
One thing I'm really realizing is it's incredibly important for the DER community to keep a careful eye on energy regulation, policy, and planning that affects it. In the electricity business, regulation shapes electric markets. And one area I'm really starting to focus on is distributed system planning. Due to consumer demand right now, we have a lot of electric vehicles, solar, batteries that are interacting with the utility distribution grid. And the distribution grid was not built for this. So to accommodate this new form of burgeoning energy that brings all these benefits, the distribution grid needs to be modernized, expanded, and policies need to change surrounding how we interconnect DERs to the distribution grid. Basically, the distribution grid needs to evolve with the times. So a lot of this planning, this action, these decisions are likely to happen within distributed system plans that utilities are doing. So listen to what Cameron Brooks of E9 Insights had to say about distributed system planning.
It kind of comes back to the motivating question behind this conversation of, well, what does that look like? So one of the observations that I just wanted to offer, I mean, rate cases really define what customers are going to pay at the end of the day. For years, many states have used integrated resource plans or IRPs as a strategic planning framework to really look at their bulk power system. But more recently, there are distribution system plans that commissions and states are establishing as a venue to understand what the DER landscape looks like right now, what investments are going to be needed to support DER, and how the utility system is poised to take advantage of the new complexity, sure, but also the new capabilities that are available at the grid edge. So over 20 states, which is a good number, but obviously not all, have established a distribution system planning process. And that really reflects a growing recognition of the need for some kind of holistic approach to what are the investment strategies in the distribution system to, again, match or meet this moment of increasing complexity, but also increasing capability. We spend a lot of time looking at these. We've done a lot of deep dive research about, what different states are doing, what are some of the components. And we think it's an opportunity for this community to bring attention to the distribution planning processes.
As I said earlier, Energy Changemakers provides content and community for those working on the grid edge. And these are the kind of conversations we're having. If this interests you, It informs your work. I hope you'll join us. If you check out the About page on energychangemakers.com, you'll see that there are a lot of different ways you can participate. From attending free events and reading free content, to subscribing to our newsletter, also free, or joining our premium community, which provides premium content, networking, and deeper connection, as well as invitation to exclusive events. The energy world is changing fast. If you're among those that want to help shape the change, come join Energy Changemakers. Thank you for joining us today on the Energy Changemakers podcast. I hope today's conversation has inspired you to think differently about the role of distributed energy in our society. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and consider leaving us a review. You can help us shape the dialogue around energy. Go to energychangemakers.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and join our community. Together, we can make a real difference in how quickly we can make our grid local, equitable, and clean.